This is a recording for the article titled The High Water Mark. As the train clattered along the tracks, General Robert E. Lee thought about ideas for a possible campaign. It was late May 1863, and Lee was headed to Richmond, Virginia to meet with the President of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia recently had defeated a much larger enemy force at Chancellorsville, Virginia. But the general still agonized about how to turn the Civil War in the South's favor. In Richmond, Lee explained his plan to Davis. The general felt the South must make a major offensive into Union territory. He hoped this movement would take the pressure off Richmond, disrupt Union railroads, get supplies for his troops, and encourage European countries to send support to the Confederacy. Davis approved Lee's idea and sent him back to his men. As Lee began moving his army northward from Fredericksburg, Virginia, towards Maryland, surprised Union officers could not believe that Lee would leave Richmond. Brigadier General Joseph Fighting Joe Hooker, commander of the Union Army, responded cautiously. Hooker had lost the battle at Chancellorsville to Lee, and he was not anxious to lose another. He allowed the Confederates to advance uncontested, and Lee gradually gained the momentum for which he had hoped. As the Confederate troops advanced, they defeated a Union force at Winchester, Virginia, and secured the supplies they needed to continue. Near the end of the march, Lee's cavalry extended itself and ended up on the other side of the enemy's lines. In those days, the horse-mounted cavalry served as the eyes and ears of the army and collected news about the movements of the enemy. Lee was forced to continue north without knowing the exact position of the Union troops. On June 28, the Confederate spy reported to Lee that he saw Union troops camped a few miles east in Frederick, Maryland. A shocked Lee ordered his troops to come together in Cashtown, Pennsylvania, with the mountains at their back to protect their flanks and rear. While Lee moved north, President Abraham Lincoln pondered the situation. Hooker had lost the confidence of the government and the nation. So Lincoln decided to replace him with Major General George G. Meade. Meade took command of the Army of the Potomac on June 28th. He pushed north from Frederick, always conscious that he must protect Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, Maryland. On July 1st, one of the Confederate generals sent men into nearby Gettysburg to find much-needed supplies and shoes for the Southern soldiers. Union cavalry were also in Gettysburg, sent there to resist any Confederate advance. Almost accidentally, a battle broke out between the divisions of the two armies. Soon both forces were heavily engaged. Union troops originally fought north and west of Gettysburg, but Lee's troops pushed them back to a narrow chain of hills running south of town, known as Seminary Ridge. By the end of the first day of fighting, the Confederate Army had the momentum, but Union forces held a position on the high ground. July 2nd dawned hot and humid. Lee and his commanding officers charted their attack plan. A large force of Confederates that had arrived during the night would attack the left flank of the Union Army, while other Southern forces attacked the right flank. They hoped to strike the Union Army with a surprisingly strong blow at a weak point. One of Lee's officers, Lieutenant General James Longstreet, felt uneasy about the battle plan. He feared the Union troops held too many strong defensive positions along the ridges. As he slowly and reluctantly moved his troops into position, precious time slipped away. Meanwhile, more Union soldiers arrived, and on the right flank they built walls of stone and logs for protection. Finally, at 4 o'clock that afternoon, the battle started. Time after time, the Confederates attacked the Union positions, but the Union lines held. By nightfall, the Confederate troops had lost many men and gained little ground. The next day, Lee decided to launch a full-scale assault on the center of the Union line. The Confederates opened the battle with a tremendous barrage of cannon fire. The Union troops responded with their own cannon. For more than an hour, the cannon blasted away at each other until Union officers finally ordered their men to stop firing their weapons. The Confederate officers concluded that the cannon had destroyed several Union strongholds. In reality, however, the Union soldiers had laid low behind rocks and rails and received few injuries. Confederate officers then ordered an estimated 12,000 soldiers to march across an open field to attack what they believed to be Meade's weakened defensive line. As the Confederate Army moved forward out of range of shelter and then charged, Union soldiers opened up with cannon fire and guns. Confederate soldiers fell by the thousands. Only a few hundred reached the stand of trees for which they had been told to aim, known as the Angle, where many fell to Union bayonets. Others were taken prisoner. The Confederates' major offensive had failed. Devastated by the defeat, Lee and his troops retreated south. Historians call Gettysburg the high water mark of the Civil War, because the South would never again strongly advance so far into the North. Lee had lost thousands of fighting men, and his troops had consumed a lot of badly needed supplies. The South had lost its momentum and all hope of obtaining European support. The war would go on for another 2 years, but in many people's minds, it was really lost at Gettysburg.